Sometimes when we're talking about change, we want to describe it in relation to the starting value. Why? Well, because how big of a change something is relative to where it started. Right, so let me give you an example. Suppose that yesterday a cup of coffee cost $1.85, and today it costs $2.25. That's an increase of 40 cents. That's a big deal, right? Yesterday I could get my coffee for $1.85. Today I've got to pay $2.25. I'm going to be really mad, right? On the other hand, suppose yesterday a TV cost $325.65, and today it costs $325.95. That's still an increase of 40 cents. And I don't really care about that, do I? If I was planning on dropping $3.25 and change for a TV yesterday, and I'm still planning on dropping $3.25 and change for a TV today, yeah, I'm pretty cool with that. What's the difference? Well, the difference is, relative to $1.85, 40 cents is a lot. Relative to $325.65, 40 cents is practically nothing. So sometimes the relative change is what's actually important to us. In those cases, one way of describing the change is as a percent of the starting amount. We always describe percent change using the starting amount as the base. Notice I said percent of the starting amount. Why? Well, we like to think about percent change moving forward in time. And we like to be able to easily compare the outcomes for things that started in the same place. So we like the starting amount better for our base than any of the other quantities involved. That's the way that we use the term percent change. And then when we're describing a percent change, the change is always the portion. Changes, of course, can be increases or decreases, and we're going to describe that in the usual way. An increase is always a positive change. So let's see how we would describe a situation in this way. Suppose that a quantity changes from 40 to 30, a decrease of 10. This is a 25% decrease. So we have information about the starting amount, the change, and the final amount. We have information about just the amounts, and we also have information about the percent of the starting amount. In this story, the starting amount is 40. The change is a decrease of 10, so negative 10. And the final amount is 30. This is a 25% decrease. The percent change is negative 25. And I'm going to include the percent sign in this column, just so I remember that these are all representing percentages. We could also have a percentage here. The starting amount is, of course, always 100% of the starting amount. And just for the moment, I'm going to write a 75 here. We'll talk about that in a minute. Right. This is a 25% decrease. The final amount is 75% of the starting amount. Okay, so how do I understand this? I'm going to call these line 1, line 2, and line 3, just so we can talk about them right now in this video. And I have to remember that when we're talking about percent change, the base is always the starting amount. So this amounts column, this agrees with what we already know about change, right? The change is final minus start. Or we could phrase that as final is start plus change, or as start is final minus change. Of course, all of those are true in this column. You can confirm that for yourself. Looking at the first row, well, of course, the starting amount is 100% of itself. We could set up the percent proportion. 40 over 40 is 100%, but it's also just completely obvious. Row 2 is a little bit harder to see, not a lot, but a little bit. In row 2, we see that the change is negative 25% of the start. So we can see that looking at a percent proportion. The change over the base, which is the start, is negative 25%. We can see this if we cross multiply. Right, we'll get negative 10 times 100 is 40 times negative 25. Both of these products will be negative. This is 1,000. And noting that 4 times 25 is 100, this is 100 with a 0 on the end. So, in fact, this proportion is true. Row 3 is the hardest part. It isn't hard to see that it's true, right? The final amount over the starting amount is 75%, right? Looking at the cross products, 30 times 100 is 3,000. 40 times 75 is a little bit harder. Let's write that out. 4 times 5 is 20. 4 times 7 is 28, 29, 30. So it's true. It works. But how would we come up with that 75? Well, we know that the final amount is the starting amount plus the change. That's certainly true. But because of the way that fraction addition works, right, we can write fractions that have these numerators, and all of them have the starting amount as the denominator. And this sentence will still work. Right? We can say final over start must be start over start plus change over start. But start over start, that's 100%. That's obviously true. Change over start, we're told in the problem that that's negative 25%. Add those together, we see that final over start has to be 75%. Okay, so this holds together. It makes sense. Let me give you an exercise where I just give you a paragraph like this and ask you to fill in the table and set up the percent proportions for line 2 and line 3. So a quantity changes from 10 to 12. This is an increase of 2. It's a 20% increase, and the final amount is 120% of the starting amount. Fill in all of that information in this table and set up the percent proportions that show you that the percents in row 2 and row 3 are correct. Pause the video and try this now. Okay, so our quantity is changing from 10 to 12. That means it's starting at 10 and ending at 12. This is an increase of 2. Increase is a positive change. So that means our change is positive 2. This is a 20% increase. So the percent change is positive 20%. The final amount is 120% of the starting amount. And then there's something that goes in this last box, right? Oh, yeah. The starting amount is 100% of itself. Okay, percent proportion to confirm these percents. So the change, it says, is 20% of the start. The change is the portion, the start is the base. The change is the portion, the start is the base, and we're claiming that that's 20%. It's easy to see that this proportion is true without even cross-multiplying, right? If we just cancel the common factor of 10, it's very clearly true. In line 3, it says the ending amount is 120% of the starting amount. So now the ending amount is the portion, the start is the base, and we're saying that that is 120%. And again, it's easy to see that this proportion is true also without going to the cross products. Just cancel a common factor of 10.